Let me ask you a question. When you think of women in the Bible, what comes to mind? Perhaps images of quiet homemakers or background figures. But what if I told you that the Bible's filled with stories of courageous, wise, and influential women who played pivotal roles in shaping history? Today we're diving deep into these narratives to uncover the true roles of women in the Bible, beyond the stereotypes. The Bible is not just a collection of ancient texts, it's a tapestry of human experiences, challenges, and triumphs. Within its pages, women emerge not as mere side characters, but as central figures who demonstrate faith, leadership, and resilience. From the Old Testament to the New, their stories offer insights that are both timeless and relevant today. Let's begin with some of the stories in the Old Testament. There's Deborah, the prophetess and judge in Israel. In Judges 4 and 5, Deborah leads the Israelites to victory against the Canaanite army, showcasing her wisdom and leadership. Then there's Huldah, another prophetess who authenticated the book of the law during King Josiah's reign, 2 Kings 22:14-20. These women weren't exceptions. They were integral to God's plan, demonstrating that leadership and spiritual insight are not confined by gender. Esther, a Jewish queen in Persia who risked her life to save her people from genocide. Her story, detailed in the book of Esther, is a testament to bravery and strategic thinking. Similarly, Rahab, a resident of Jericho, protected Israelite spies, leading to her family's salvation and her inclusion in Jesus' genealogy, Joshua 2, Matthew 1 and 5. These narratives highlight women's capacity to act decisively and courageously in critical moments. In the New Testament, women continue to play vital roles. Mary Magdalene, for instance, is the first to witness and proclaim Jesus' resurrection, John 20:11-18. The Samaritan woman at the well becomes an evangelist to her community after her encounter with Jesus, John 4:1-42. These accounts illustrate that women were not only followers, but also key messengers of the gospel. The early church recognized and embraced women's contributions. Phoebe is referred to as a deacon in Romans 16:1, entrusted with delivering Paul's letters to the Romans. Priscilla, alongside her husband Aquila, is noted for their theological instruction, even mentoring Apollos, a prominent preacher, Acts 18:24-26. These examples underscore the active participation of women in teaching and leadership within the early Christian community. Thing is, when we read the Bible, we're stepping into a very different world. Ancient Israel was a deeply patriarchal society. Women often had little to no legal rights, were treated as property, and their voices were frequently ignored in public life. And yet, the Bible quietly but powerfully pushes back. The radical aspect isn't just that women appear in the biblical story, it's that God empowers them with voice, purpose, and agency, in a culture that tried to do the opposite. Let's break it down. 1. God worked through the culture, but didn't obey it. God didn't always overthrow the cultural system in one dramatic moment, but he kept planting seeds of change through the people he chose. Take Deborah. In a time when women couldn't hold political or military authority, she judged an entire nation and led Israel into battle. And no one, man or woman, questioned her right to do so. Why? Because the Spirit of God was on her. Or Jesus, he consistently broke societal norms. He spoke with women in public when others wouldn't. He taught them theology like with Mary and Martha. And he made them the first messengers of his resurrection, a role usually reserved for men. That wasn't just a nice gesture. It was a cultural earthquake. 2. The Bible honors women's bravery in the face of injustice. Think of the midwives in Exodus, Sapphira and Puah. When Pharaoh demanded that all Hebrew baby boys be killed, they said no. They disobeyed the most powerful man on earth, quietly, courageously, and God honored them for it. Think of Esther. She used her influence inside a corrupt empire not for herself, but to protect her people, even though doing so could have cost her life. These women didn't just survive cultural injustice, they subverted it. With faith, boldness, and wisdom, they became instruments of divine justice. Number 3, Jesus was the great equalizer. If you ever wonder how God feels about gender inequality, look at Jesus. He didn't care about social rules when it came to showing love. He let women sit at his feet like disciples when no rabbi would allow it. He healed, taught, and defended them even when religious leaders watched with disapproval. He saw worth where society saw weakness. And the early church followed his example. Paul wrote that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, Galatians 3:28. That was unheard of. In a culture built on division and hierarchy, the gospel introduced something radical: equality in God's family. Number 4, what we call normal isn't always right. Sometimes we inherit cultural norms without even realizing it. We repeat old ideas about a woman's place, not because God said them, but because tradition did. But the Bible invites us to think critically, not just repeat history. It shows us a God who constantly challenged oppressive systems, not always by tearing them down, but by quietly lifting up the people those systems tried to suppress. So here's the question: what cultural norms are you still carrying? About women, about leadership, about who gets to speak? The Bible doesn't just invite us to admire these women, it invites us to follow their example by being bold enough to question what's considered normal and faithful enough to believe that God can speak through anyone. As we reflect on these stories of these powerful women in the Bible, Deborah, Ruth, Esther, Rahab, Priscilla, Mary Magdalene, we begin to see a bigger pattern. God has never placed women on the sidelines. Instead, he's consistently brought them to the center of his story, often in the most unexpected and pivotal ways. But what does this mean for us today? In today's world, it's easy to fall into old patterns, religious systems that quietly reinforce stereotypes, cultures that expect women to stay silent, or even inner voices that whisper, "You're not enough." And yet the Bible tells a different story. It tells us that women were judges, prophets, evangelists, teachers, mothers of nations, and the first to witness the risen Christ. Let that sink in. Here are some valuable lessons for today's world. Your faith has power, no title required. Many of the women we studied didn't hold official roles. They didn't have titles, degrees, or recognition, but they did have trust in God, and that trust changed the world around them. You don't need to be qualified in the world's eyes. You don't need a stage to lead or a mic to speak truth. Deborah sat under a palm tree and led a nation. Ruth was a foreign widow with no status, yet she became part of Jesus' lineage. Mary said yes to God with no power, no plan, just faith. In a time where image is everything, the Bible quietly reminds us God sees the heart, not the resume. Number 2, leadership looks like love, not control. Too often leadership is equated with dominance or authority, but the women in the Bible model a different kind of leadership. Leadership grounded in courage, compassion, and conviction. Esther risked her life not to gain power, but to protect her people. The Samaritan woman didn't start a ministry. She went and told her truth to those who knew her brokenness, and people listened. These women led through love, and in doing so, they showed that true leadership doesn't suppress others, it lifts them up. Whether you lead a church, a business, a family, or just your own soul through a hard season, your example matters. God breaks the mold. Over and over, God chooses the one no one expected. He lifts the barren woman, the foreigner, the outcast, the sinner. Why? Because he's not interested in what the world values. He's interested in hearts that say yes. So if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever felt that your past disqualifies you, take heart. You're exactly the kind of person God delights in using. The Bible doesn't hide the messiness of these women's lives, and that's the point. God doesn't wait for perfection. He moves through availability and faith. We're all part of the story. The Bible isn't just a book of ancient history. It's a living conversation that keeps unfolding. And you're part of that. Whether you're a man learning to honor the women around you, a woman wondering if your voice matters, or someone trying to find your role in a broken world, these stories tell us you have a place. God's story isn't finished, and he's still raising up people, women and men, to speak truth, live boldly, and love deeply. So maybe the real question isn't just what was the role of women in the Bible? Maybe the question is, what's your role now? Because the same God who called Deborah to lead, Esther to speak up, and Mary to believe is calling you. Don't wait to be chosen. You already are. As we wrap up, one thing is clear. The women of the Bible were not background characters. They were bold, faithful, wise, and often the ones who quietly carried the story forward. They challenged norms, spoke truth, and followed God even when it was risky. And their lives still speak today. So here are a few questions to reflect on. Which women's story do you connect with the most, and why? Are there gifts in you or others that have gone unheard because of stereotypes? How can you help create space for every voice in your family, church, or community? The Bible shows us that God works through anyone, man or woman, who's willing to say yes. So may we listen better, see deeper, and live with the kind of faith that includes and uplifts. Thanks for watching. And if this resonated with you, leave a comment, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next video.